Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Good Sunday. Happy Sunday to you. I'm glad you guys have tuned in to watch the show. Today is the 3rd, November 3rd, 2024. Thank you for tuning in. There's a lot going on this week. The United States is sending their B-52 bombers to arrive in the Middle East because they know that this thing, I think, is getting ready to escalate big time. And I'm going to talk later in the show about how I think gold and silver are going to really take a massive takeoff right away, pretty soon, just not long after the elections. And I'm going to explain to you the reasons why I think that. Now, you remember I told you guys that they were going to tread water up until the elections, and they pretty much did. We've seen a little bit of price range rise in the gold and silver market up during that period. What was it? I told you guys for couple months there, but it wasn't anything spectacular. I think we're going to see some pretty spectacular action. I'm going to get into the reasons why, but the United States now is sending B-52 bombers to arrive in the Middle East. Why? Because they know that tensions are at a boiling point right now, and Iran is getting ready to attack. Iran is preparing to strike on Israel from Iraqi territory within days, probably before the election. It says Israeli intelligence suggests that Iran is preparing to attack Israel from Iraqi territory in the coming days, possibly before the United States election on November 5th. The attack is expected to be carried out from Iraq using a large number of drones and ballistic missiles. Reports said that they're carrying out the attack through pro-Iranian militias in Iraq could be an attempt by Tehran, or Iran, to avoid another Israeli attack against strategic targets in Iran. So, they're going to attack from a different country. I don't know how that's going to work out. Israel's not fooled. They know it's Iranian missiles. So they're coming from a different country. So what? They still do the same damage. And Israel probably is just going to, at any rate. So this war is getting ready to escalate, probably massively, just before the election. What would be the expected results of that on the election? And what would be the expected results of that on the markets and stuff? Meanwhile, I've heard word that President Putin, I don't know whether he's had talks with Israel or whether he's going over to Israel or just exactly what's going. I can't find a whole lot of news stories on that. But Putin has said that the Gaza war must end with the establishment of a Palestinian state. So that's the position that Putin has on this. And the Russians, they're on the Iranian side. Now the American military is on the Israel side, and we still got this war being raged over in Ukraine, and now we have troops from North Korea moving in. Zelensky has urged the Allies to act before the North Korean troops reach the front. So they're on their way to the front, evidently. And they want to do some sort of preemptive Ukrainian strike on the camps where the North Korean troops are being trained. Now, the United States, okay, see, I'll read it right here. It says, Zelensky raised the prospect of preemptive Ukrainian strike on camps where the North Koreans are being trained, and said that Kiev knows their location, but he said Ukraine cannot do it without permission from the Allies to use the Western-made long-range weapons to hit the targets deep inside Russia. Now, that's that red line I was telling you about in my last show. Right there. So they're pushing for it. It says, but instead it says America's watching, Britain is watching, Germany is watching. Everybody is just waiting for the North Korean military to start attacking Ukrainians. Well, Zelensky said in a post date on Friday on the Telegram messaging app. Uh, the Biden administration has said on Thursday that some 8,000 North Korean soldiers are now in Russia's Kursk region near Ukraine's border and preparing to help the Kremlin fight against the Ukrainian troops in coming days. This creates a situation with South Korea. The South Korean parliament warns the president sending arms to Ukraine risks a war with Kim Jong-un. So the South Korean Yoon Sung Yeol, or Moon, I think his name is, I think the Y is actually pronounced Moon, I think. President Moon is weighing directly providing arms to Ukraine. So South Korea is now, North Korean sent troops, South Korea to Ukraine. Now South Korea is thinking about sending arms to Ukraine, thinking about it. And they're being warned that these arms could be used against North Korean troops. Oh my goodness, it's a situation that just could blow. This is dynamite. Actually, this is not dynamite. This is nitroglycerin. One wrong move, bang. You know, this whole thing. I can just see it setting up that way. I mean, the United States has been warning too. Now, this is back to the Middle East war. The United States is warning we won't be able to restrain Israel if you attack. They're talking to Iran. The Biden administration has warned Iran in recent days against launching another attack on Israel and stressed it won't be able to restrain the Israelis, according to a U.S. official and former Israeli official being briefed on the issue. So, what's all this boiling down to, ultimately? Well, it looks like war is getting ready to break out in more seriously in Ukraine and in the Middle East, both simultaneously, or pretty much at the same time. But the war in the Middle East has the potential to send silver and gold prices skyrocketing. You know, I'm going to tell you guys, let's take a look at the silver price right here. I'm going to tell you guys, honestly. The silver price is determined by the energy consumption. It's just like oil. Oil prices are determined by energy consumption to get a barrel of oil. Like, how much energy do you have to use to get a barrel of oil up out of the ground? It depends, you know, like where the oil comes gushing out of the pipes, you know, like over in Saudi Arabia, their price per barrel, cost per barrel is very, very low. Now, over here in the United States, where they have to frack the oil out, it costs more to get it out of the ground. Now, silver's the same way. You got to get it out of the ground, but silver's extremely labor intensive because they find it in rocks. It's little tiny flecks of silver in the rocks. They have to crush those rocks, pound them to a powder. Then they have to separate the silver from that powder using chemicals and stuff. And it all costs diesel fuel. It all really comes down to, once they get all the machines in place, yeah, there is a little bit of maintenance cost in the rock crushers and keeping the things repaired, like the big bulldozer machines they used to dig it out and push it into the rock crushers, and all that infrastructure requires maintenance. But the key part to keep all of that running is mostly diesel fuel they have to buy for those big diesel engines that move it. Move the rocks and stuff. So it's tied into fuel prices. And the biggest chunk of that it costs about $20 more or less to get an ounce of silver out of the ground and get it into that form that you guys like to buy in a coin form or in a bar form. To get it into that form, it costs about $20 an ounce. That's all in costs, including exploration and whatever, right? But right now, that cost is around $20. So they got a little profit margin there now at 32.42, right? But now let's just say for a second that this war in the Middle East blows out of control and that Iran decides to do a blockade on the Gulf of Hormuz or the Strait of Hormuz. Oil price would double and diesel price would go up by 2.5 times. So suddenly, let's say that all-in production cost of $20 per ounce is probably, maybe, I'm going to guess, I'm going to say probably 60% of that is diesel fuel to get it crushed. They have to crush, seriously, they have to crush like 500 pounds of rocks to get that ounce of silver. 400, 500 pounds of rocks. Diesel fuel is probably their biggest expense. They probably have to buy a lot of it. And if we see the price of oil, diesel, go up 2.5 times, then that percentage is going to force them. Because that $20 will go up to like 28 or 32 for production costs. It'll go up to what it is now, what they're getting all in. Because they have to pay for all that exorbitantly higher costs. And what's it going to do for everything else? Because, everything's got oil in it. So as the silver price shoots up because it costs more to produce, we're also going to see the price of everything else go up at the same time. And then when you consider in that the government is going to continue with their spending splurge. In fact, they're going to have to do even more so once these elections are. You just watch them spend money like a drunken sailor. We're going to see. They've lost. Also, they can't do that again. That trick they did with the Fed raising rates, they can't do that again. That's like the Daffy Duck thing on Bugs Bunny. Remember Daffy Duck? He did a show and. Where he drank gasoline or whatever and lit a match above his mouth, and the crowd loved it. They all clapped and cheered, Daffy, do it again, do it again. And in the cartoon, he was floating up to heaven, and he says, I can't do that one again. He's like, that's a one time. It was a one-off for the Fed. They can't do that trick again. So, what are we left with? We're left with oil prices shooting to the moon because there's probably going to be a war coming. And when I tell you moonshot for oil, I'm thinking in my head $200 per barrel, which put the price, it would pretty much double the price of the pumps, maybe double and half again more. And then there's going to be shortages. Take that into consideration, I'm going to tell you, this is so bad right now. Every single one of you guys out in my audience should be keeping your gas tank full all the time. Keep it full all the time because you don't know when this thing's going to strike. And the next day, all the gas stations could be out of fuel. And then you're stuck. You're not going nowhere. And sad to say, if you did buy a gas can and fill it with gas and put it in the shed or something, well, you'll double your money. Whatever you spent for it. Just by keeping a little bit extra on hand. Of course, I'm going to tell you about storing gas is you have to put an additive in it or it'll go bad after a little while. It goes bad after about 6 months. You got to put an additive in it if you're going to keep it any longer than that. But typically it's not something that the ordinary person stores away like too much. Some people do store a little bit away. But at any rate, that's what we got going on with this situation. Yes, I think it's going to be problems. Now, the Bitcoin market, we saw Bitcoin skyrocket up to like $72,000, and now it's back down to $68,000. So we've saw a little bit of a jump and then a fallback right now, but we've also seen the fallback in gold and silver as well. Now, I'm expecting a turnaround in crypto, but I'm not real excited about crypto in the long run, and I'm thinking more and more it's likely that we're going to have periods where there's around the world, not just in America, but around the world, significant power outage periods. Uh, because the wars, I think when they really get going and the gloves come off, I think we're going to see a countries attack other countries' infrastructure. Not excluded to the BRICS or the NATO, but that's just what they do, is they'll try to attack any vulnerability that another country has. And this could be very negative for cryptocurrencies because they rely upon the internet, and the internet relies upon the power grid. You know? And people have to do commerce. No matter what the situation is in the world, if the United States grid is having brownouts or power outages that last for weeks or whatever, the world has to continue on and they'll use something else. You know? And cryptocurrency is caught in that thing where it's just like the regular currencies are caught in the same thing. Now, like the dollar is the same way. They've all gone digital. They all gone internet. You pay most of your payments you made over the internet with the dollar now. It's basically a digital currency, and so is the cryptocurrency. You're going to trade, you got to have the internet up and running, and if you get enough problems with that, it could negatively affect the price. So this isn't going to real physical gold and silver. This isn't going to affect the price whatsoever because it was used before there was an internet, before there was. Gold and silver was used for the last 7,000 years before electricity. And that wasn't that long ago, really. I mean, how long was it ago? Was it before electricity? Around what? It came in, around 1920 or something? 1910. I suppose if you went back to 1910, most houses wouldn't have it. And if you went to 1930, a lot of houses did have it, I think. But I think all the way up until the 1940s or 1950s, they were still building houses. And when they were doing the rough-in for the carpenters and stuff, they were roughing in gas pipes for light. And I think it was quite late. It took a long time for all the houses to finally have electricity. You know, they didn't even have a ground in. If you go into these older houses, you'll notice that they didn't even have a ground wire. They just had the two prongs for the outlet in all of them. Now, that's the really old ones. Those houses, they were the earlier ones to get electricity. And now they don't meet code. And if an electrician takes a look at them or the county takes a look at them, they'll make you pull all the wiring out and rewire it all because it doesn't carry a ground. But it's got those old Romex cables as well in those walls that got paper all around them and everything instead of plastic. And it's a fire hazard. those really old outlets. Just a little bit of background knowledge on that. But at any rate, let's move on. We got other stuff to look at. We got to look at the markets and see what they've did. The S&P is up 23 points on the week. The S&P 500 at 5,728. The Dow ended the week at 42,052. It was up 288 points. Gold finished the week at 27.45, and crude oil at 69.33. I'm going to tell you guys what, $69.33 for a barrel of crude. I think that's a 45-gallon barrel, or is it 35? I'm not exactly sure the gallonage on the barrel, but I can tell you what, that's a joke compared to what might be coming. $69 a barrel crude might be a joke if we're looking at $200 a barrel crude. And right now we're under $70. Can you just imagine? And what that means is you think, oh, nobody will pay those prices. Guess what? They'll be lined up and down the block. And that happened in the 1970s, and it'll happen all over again because people will pay any price they have to pay for the stuff. They already got you over a barrel. I mean, look at the price of gas now. Here in Canada, it's like $7 a gallon. Down in the States, I think it's like $4. You know, maybe it's a bit more. I don't know. But in the States, but all I can tell you is they pump that. They have when they first went in. Stuff bubbles out of the ground. It's just like in jig clamp it, and they just basically they take it out of the ground, put it in a barrel, and then they say, "Give me money." Well, when they started out, it was real cheap. That's why they always do everything. And then when you get dependent upon it, and they get you dependent upon it, then they jack the price up higher and higher and higher. In the end, you can't even afford it. It's greed. You know, that's just the human tendency is ultimately just descends toward greed. And, you know, I saw this commercial on TV there. Uh, like, and it was funny, you know. It was this guy, and he was like one of the earliest washing machine salesmen, you know. And he was standing there, and he was all dressed up like a guy from the early 1900s and stuff. I know it was a commercial that they were making or whatever. That was like a reenactment. But he was saying, look at this new machine. He had one of those old-fashioned washing machines that had the wringer on it and everything, you know, and agitated the laundry. And he also had a refrigerator there. And he was showing the ladies. And there's two ladies and two men there standing there looking at these machines, these newfangled machines. And he says, look, this actually washes clothes. And the two ladies are very interested. You know, and they were watching. And he put the clothes in, and he was turning it on, and was agitating them and stuff. And the two gentlemen there are not really saying anything. I guess they are their wives standing there, and their wives are very interested in the washing machine. And he showed them the fridge and showed them how it could create ice and everything else, you know. And one of the men there, he said, we don't need that stuff, he said. You know, but the guy says, well, it'll make your life easier. He said, you won't have to spend all day, your wife won't have to spend all day washing clothes and everything else, you know. And the other guy, he wasn't buying all that stuff. He said it's just going to create more dependence. He saw through it all, in other words, so. And the salesman was like, didn't like him doing all that stuff, saying all that stuff, you know. But it was so true that it just makes, actually, in the end, it actually makes your life harder and harder because you got to buy, maintain these machines. Uh, and it makes these other guys who are making the machines richer. And the people who are selling oil, it makes them awful rich because no matter how you cut it, energy, they got a monopoly on it. And there's no end. Now that they got you where they want you, in other words, you have to have the stuff. You want to drive across town, you have to have the stuff. Well, you're going to pay any price, no matter how long that lineup is at the pump. And you're going to wait to get it. And you're going to pay the $12 a gallon or whatever it is. And be glad that you got some. Because they got you where they want you. This is a dream of all these people who are not only ultra rich, but this is their dream, is to get you where they want you so that they can squeeze every last penny out of your pocket and make you a debt slave to their system. And by gosh, they've sure done a good job of it, you know. Now, taking a look at our bonds and rates today. When isn't that coming in? There we go. We've seen rising yields lately, and they're creeping up quite a bit higher. The U.S. 10-year is creeping up toward 5%. It was up 10 basis points on the week, and it's at 4.38, and the U.S. 30-year is at 4.58, and it's up 10 basis points on the week. Maybe more. I think that was Friday's numbers. Now, taking a look at the dollar index, and it's riding high right now. It's riding high. And you know what it says? It says in the Bible, it says, beware you're standing that you do not fall. In other words, if you're really, what's the word I'm looking for when you're really, anyway, I think that's a number that is ridiculously high, and when you consider just exactly what the dollar is up against and what it's going to come up against in the very near future. It's coming up against the BRICS. India is repatriating their gold big time, like 100 tons or something. Other countries are repatriating gold, and it's they they don't trust any longer. Anyway, thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. You guys listen. You have a great afternoon. Bye bye.